Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Soul Talk and Psychic Advice. Today, we're talking about something that confuses many people because it doesn't fit the stereotype that we've heard about. When you hear the word narcissist, you may picture someone who is loud, arrogant, demanding, diabolical, manipulative, and obviously self centered. But what if the person is incredibly polite? And what made me decide to do this podcast because I had an aha moment yesterday about someone that I've known for a couple of years. And I put the pieces together. I'm like, something didn't feel right about this person. And, although I'm a psychic, I try not to judge people. And so I didn't want to form an opinion for a long time. I just kind of sat back and observed who this person was and how they talked. And, I spent a lot of time around this person because of a circle of friends. And I started to understand, wow, this person is a different type of narcissist. And I remember listening to a psychologist on YouTube and they said, oh, there's many types of narcissists. So we know the outright one, we know the covert one, the malignant one. There's all these different types. But what if this person is polite most of the time, even at home? It's like, what if they're generous? They give to people, they care about people, and you feel like you could almost count on them. And what if they smile, volunteer, compliment people, and seem like one of the nicest people you've ever met? Can someone appear genuinely kind and still display narcissistic traits? The answer is yes. And I did some digging because I wanted to make sure I was correct on this. So I did some research and I asked someone that I know who understands narcissistic behavior. And I said, am I reading this right? Is there such thing as a very nice narcissist? And they said, oh, yes. So today we're exploring what some people informally refer to as a nice narcissist. This is not the official psychological diagnosis or clinical subtype. Rather, it's a way of describing individuals whose narcissistic traits are hidden beneath a socially acceptable, likable, or helpful personality. And there's a few out there. Because these individuals don't fit the stereotype, people often question themselves. I know something feels off. That was me. They're so nice. Maybe I'm imagining it. I did question myself like this. I can't explain why I leave conversations feeling confused. Yep. And whoa. And I felt like this was important to share. Remember, my podcast is about sharing information that I think will help people, maybe not today, but maybe later at some point. And so by the end of today's episode, you'll better understand why this can happen and why appearances alone don't always tell the whole story. So let's talk about how narcissism isn't just about arrogance. One of the biggest misconceptions about narcissism is that it's defined by confidence or ego. Psychologically, narcissistic traits can revolve around something much deeper. A fragile sense of self that must be protected at all costs. That wounded child. Sadly, a lot of narcissists are born out of childhood trauma. Because of this, the person may have difficulty with accepting criticism, acknowledging mistakes, experiencing healthy shame, taking responsibility, seeing situations from another person's perspective. They won't take criticism because they're like, I'm always good. Look at all the good things that I do. They just don't acknowledge mistakes. You never hear, well, I could have handled this better. Experiencing healthy shame? No. They will get defensive, like, you know who I am. You know my character. You should know by now. Taking responsibility? No, it's always done to them. They give so much. They've never done anything wrong. And yes, there are some people who aren't narcissists who just were blamed so much growing up, they won't take responsibility because it's like, here I go being blamed again. There's that. But this this case of not taking responsibility is part of a bigger picture for the nice narcissist. And seeing situations from another person's perspective, they can't. They just see what the person did to them. The person's entire psychological system becomes organized around preserving a particular self image. For some people, that image is exceptional. For others, it is always the victim. For others, it may be I'm the nicest person you ever meet. That's a red flag. The image just changes. The underlying need to protect it remains remarkably similar. I mean, I still have a little bit of chills of what I realized yesterday. And so hopefully this helps people. I think we all know a nice narcissist, a very, very nice person, but something's off, right? Why nice can be misleading. Being nice and being emotionally healthy are not the same thing. A psychologically healthy person is capable of kindness while also accepting responsibility. A person with strong narcissistic traits may also be kind. They may donate to charities, help strangers, support friends, appear generous. They're a good ear. They listen so well. They're charming. They make excellent first impressions. You can even call this person up and tell them your problems. None of these behaviors automatically rule out narcissistic traits. The important question isn't, are they nice? The better question is, what happens when their self image is threatened? That's the key. What happens when their self image is threatened? That's where the pattern often becomes visible. Notice what happens when someone disagrees with them. Someone sets a boundary. Setting a boundary to the nice person, how dare you? Someone criticizes them. Someone says no to them. Someone points out hurtful behavior. They don't hurt people. You know, you're reading it wrong. You're just sensitive, or I would never hurt anybody. Those moments often reveal far more than years of polite interactions. The hidden patterns. Let's explore some common patterns. Difficulty taking responsibility. Everyone makes mistakes. We all do. There are no perfect people out there. We all make mistakes whether we want to or not. Emotionally healthy people can usually say, I handled that poorly. I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong. Someone with strong narcissistic traits may struggle to say these words. Instead, responsibility becomes redirected. They might say, well, if they hadn't, I only reacted because they made me do it. Notice that responsibility always stays somewhere else, or they're just like, oh, you just didn't interpret what I was saying correctly. That's your own stuff. You need to go heal yourself. You need to go fix yourself. It's your own trauma. They're going to push back because, especially with a nice narcissist, because they're like, I'm always nice. I know I'm nice. And the reason why they are always trying to be nice and still a narcissist is because they probably had a parent who wasn't nice, who was brutal, who was extremely mean. They said, I'm not going to be nothing like that parent. They went to the extreme of, I'm going to be nice, but they didn't heal the issues beneath it, and that created the narcissism. So, the need to feel justified. Many people can tolerate saying, I understand why I felt angry, but I don't like how I behaved. Someone with strong narcissistic defenses often feels compelled to justify their behavior. Rather than asking, was my behavior healthy? They ask, can I explain why it wasn't really my fault? This protects their self-image, and they're all about their self-image. Oh, the subtle put-downs. Not all criticism is direct. Some people communicate through sarcasm, backhanded compliments, subtle digs, disguised jokes. And you know what else they do? They tell you how someone did something better than you, and then they go, but you're so great, and it confuses you, or, I found this really great massage therapist, you're still a good one. It's something subtle. If someone expresses discomfort, they may hear, I was only kidding. You're too sensitive. You misunderstood me. The comment disappears. The impact is not. And, a narcissist will never apologize. People who just never apologize. They just want time to pass, or they want to overlook, the issue and talk about how they're the victim. Yeah, I think we all know a few people like that. Externalizing blame. Life is complicated. Healthy people eventually recognize that most conflicts involve multiple perspectives. Someone with rigid narcissistic traits often experiences conflict directly. There's usually a victim and a villain. Guess which role they consistently occupy? The victim. That's who they are. Let's talk about the role of the shadow in this. If you're familiar with shadow work, this part becomes especially interesting. Psychologist Carl Jung, spelled Jung, described the shadow as parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or hide. Everyone has a shadow. The goal isn't to eliminate it, the goal is to become aware of it. Healthy people gradually learn to say, I'm capable of anger. I am capable of anger. And I always say, don't make me angry because I'm a different animal. Not violent, but yeah, we are capable of anger. I think anger is a very valid, important emotion, but a narcissist will never own up to being angry, especially a nice narcissist. I'm capable of jealousy. I'm capable of selfishness. Owning these qualities doesn't make someone a bad person, it makes them human. The difficulty arises when the shadow becomes disowned. Instead of saying, I was acting out of revenge, the mind says, they deserved it. Instead of, I was controlling, the mind says, I'm just trying to help. Instead of, I hurt someone, the mind says, they're too sensitive. The behavior remains, only ownership disappears. When we cannot own our shadow, we often experience it outside ourselves. Carl Jung famously wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This doesn't mean someone is intentionally lying. Many defensive processes operate automatically. The person genuinely experiences themselves as justified. They do. And because they built this character up over many years. I mean, I think you can see narcissism in young people, of course, but it's very diabolical to me when you see older people because they've learned to master it more. Childhood trauma and protective defenses. Many people wonder where these patterns begin. There isn't one simple answer. Some people with narcissistic traits experience childhood neglect. Others experience emotional abuse. Others were excessively praised without learning accountability. Still others had different developmental experiences. There's no single pathway. What many researchers agree on is that children develop psychological strategies that help them survive. If admitting mistakes meant humiliation, guess what? They're not going to admit it. If vulnerability meant being attacked, they are not going to be vulnerable. This continues into adulthood. We have to stop thinking, well, you're an adult now, you should know better. No, these patterns have gone on. People have to go to therapy, they have to heal to know better. If shame felt unbearable, you're not going to allow yourself to be shamed. Especially, for people who have a abusive parent, it could be mom or dad, but a lot of people talk about that very aggressive father, that very abusive, aggressive father. And that person really seems to shape people. And it was never safe, right? To be vulnerable, to admit to making a mistake. You were humiliated. You don't want to be humiliated anymore. And you probably told yourself, I'm going to be a good person. I'm not going to be like my abusive parent. But, you still have some of these factors going on that turns you into a nice narcissist. And this is why I stopped looking at narcissists as bad. I'm like, be careful. I don't know if I want to be around them, but I stopped the judgment because they definitely got an unfair shake in life. And, some people say, some therapists say narcissism can't be healed, some say it can. Um, I just feel like I'm trying to be careful with judging, but I wanted to know what this person was. I know I want to distance myself from this person because of some of the things that have been said. Yes. And so definitely, I would say step away. I think that is very important to not be around, people who are, dangerously narcissistic because are just the ones who act real nice. They could be very draining to be around. And so, it causes a child to develop powerful defenses. So, as a child, and those defenses can continue into adulthood long after the original danger has passed. It is important to remember that understanding where these defenses came from does not excuse harmful behavior. It does not. I'm not trying to excuse it, but I want to understand it so I know how to deal with people. And it's like, okay, if they're in a circle, small doses, but sometimes I've just walked away from certain friendships because there were people in that group and I just felt like, no, I can't be around this. And being an empath, it becomes even harder to be around certain people. It's like I can have compassion for you, sorry for what you went through as a child, but I can't be around it. So, it does not excuse harmful behavior. Compassion and accountability can exist together. People have to be held accountable. We can understand someone's history while expecting respectful behavior. And it's weird because I notice so many subtleties with this person. And it's like, I have tough skin now. Being on the internet and doing my work, I have very tough skin. I mean, you can call me the most degrading, humiliating thing, and I'm like, okay. I just won't have much emotion. I may have a smart comeback, but I don't have much emotion to it because I know that person's got issues and it's not for me to have to worry about. And if you're going to be, online, you're going to have thick skin because there's a lot of wounded people out there. You know how they say hurt people, and they want to hurt people. And so you, just learn to let things roll off. That's what I learned. And so when this person was making certain comments, and throughout the years I've had maybe, have interacted with people professionally like that too, but this person in the circle is just so nice. But if you listen closely, which I started listening closely, I'm like, oh, wow. And then I noticed this is a pattern that I noticed over a couple of years. It's like, this person never admits to doing anything wrong. They always twist it. You know my character. You know who I am. No, I know what you're showing. I don't know you 24/7, and what you're showing is there's a lack of accountability here. But, if somebody says I'm going to be good and they have unhealed wounds, they're going to be good, but they're still going to have those unhealed wounds come to the surface. We cannot cover up pain and trauma with niceness because then you get the nice narcissist or just some type of personality issue. And that's what I'm getting at. So I'm going to close this out. If today's episode resonated with you, remember this: kindness and emotional health are not identical. They are not. Someone can appear incredibly pleasant while still struggling with accountability, because they are. A nice narcissist will struggle. I'm a good person. I don't hurt people. They've got excuses. Just kind of listen. Listen in to some of the people in your life that, your gut's like, something's off here. Listen closely. Have a few extra conversations with them so you can understand what you're dealing with because it may protect you from something later. The most important questions to ask aren't, are they charming? Are they generous? Instead, ask, can they admit when they're wrong? Some people just can't. Can they apologize without immediately defending themselves? Some people never apologize. I have known people who have done things and they just will let time pass. They won't apologize. They just hope you will get over it. That's a serious red flag. Can they genuinely consider another person's perspective, or are they always like, well, I just always did right with this person? Do they want to understand somebody else's perspective? Can they tolerate feedback without becoming defensive? A lot of people can't for a lot of reasons. They're not necessarily narcissistic. It's because of what they grew up with, a lot of criticism. A lot of people criticize themselves, so they're trying to be perfect. So, yeah, if you give them feedback, they're like, how dare you? But within all of this other stuff, it's a concern that they could be a nice narcissist or a narcissist. Those qualities tell us much more about emotional maturity than outward niceness ever could. Finally, if you recognize yourself in today's episode, I want to leave you with hope. We all have defenses. We do. We all have blind spots. We all have a shadow, nothing to be ashamed of. The goal isn't perfection because perfection is not reality. You cannot be authentic and perfect at the same time. The goal is awareness because the moment we become willing to say, maybe there's something here for me to look at, real growth becomes possible. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I was going to talk about something else today, but when I had the aha moment, I'm like, I wonder how many other people need to hear this. How many other people are like, am I just not getting this? They are so nice and everybody thinks they're so nice. But see, we understand people on the surface. That's where we always start, and we only can go with what they show us. And so a lot of people are like, oh, they're nice and they're just going to see the nice things. And, we want more kindness in the world, more niceness in the world. But if your gut is saying something is off, you can ask yourself, do you struggle with receiving kindness, niceness from people? Or is there something else happening? So if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe. You know, Definitely feel free to send me fan mail and share it with someone who may benefit from understanding these hidden personality dynamics. So I want to thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.